We had somebody put in something in the chat in regards to that. So we're going to see if we can play around with audio. If you give us a moment here, and thanks for letting us know if you're having some issues there.
Okay, so I think our audio should be better now. Okay, outstanding.
So we getting some thumbs up in our response. Okay, so that's good news. Fantastic.
Very good. So sorry that you missed all that great introduction, but we're going to go ahead and.
Was it a great introduction? I don't know about that, but go ahead.
Well, anyway, I'm going to call it a great introduction, and no one can really that didn't hear it. All the people that did hear it can judge for us later how good it was.
Welcome, friends.
So anyway, we were talking about this idea of the Christmas season being this time that's supposed to be about peace and hope and love and joy. And because of the hustle and bustle and all of the traditions and all of the expectations of the holidays, sometimes we lose that in our marriages, and sometimes it gets really frustrating. And one of the things that Jen was talking about was to overcome that. We really need to remember what the season really is and what the season's all about. Sometimes it's easy to get frustrated with people taking the holiday and making it something other than what it is about Jesus. And that is something that we see in marriage all the time. We talk about this a lot in the podcast. There's so many times where so many people get their ideas of what marriage is supposed to be through secular media. They get these ideas of what it should be like based on TV shows or movies.
Hallmark Christmas movies.
Perfect example.
We're in trouble.
All of these movies. And so
I don't watch those. My mother-in-law is all over those. So shout out to Carol there.
My mom loves those movies. But we see this and we see the holidays and we see, wait a minute, that's not what the holidays are about. Yet at the same time, it's so easy for us to get sucked into everything that's going on and all the expectations. And so one of the first things that we talk about, the first section of the book, and one of the things we talk about a lot with couples when we're coaching them, is we need to understand what the purpose of marriage is, what the theology of marriage is. And I think that ties in really well to what this season is. It's about God breaking into this world and overcoming the powers of darkness. And we can display that in how we interact as a couple, as spouses, how we interact with each other, and as a couple, how we interact with the people around us. And so when we share who we are and what's going on and share what it means to be a Christ follower and a Christ following couple, we can overcome a lot of that frustration and a lot of that stress that builds up, because we understand at the end of the day, Christmas isn't about the gifts. Christmas isn't about all of the craziness and the trappings and the decorations. Christmas is really about Jesus, God breaking in, and our marriages should be reflecting that.
And I think that that's something that Paul talks about in Philippians. And I think that that's something that we need to be purposefully taking time for, that we're praying about, to have that peace that transcends all understanding, and that we're making that time in carving out that time where we can be mindful and we can be prayerful, to ask for that peace, but also to be proactive in taking steps to get there. And what I mean by that is, over the last couple of years, I really see it as this cooperation, and that's the word that I use, the cooperation with God, because he lays everything out in the Bible as to what we need to do. And we can't just nod our heads and say, sounds good to us. We've got to jump in and we've got to cooperate with him by following those directives. Jesus talks about in the Gospel of John, if you love me, you'll obey my commandments. And that's because we know that he can be trusted. We know that this is how we are supposed to function as humans. So it's a great thing to do, to be more mindful of that and to make sure that we're plugging into Christ during this time.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite definitions of Christianity came out. There was this thing called the Christian Vision Project around 2000, and they defined Christianity as a counterculture for the common good. There's a lot of things that go into that, but really us living our faith as different, as counter to what's going on for the good of the people around us. Jesus came and lived differently and died, and God broke in so that we could all be part of what he's doing in the world. One of the ways that we can overcome the stress and the frustration of the holidays and how we can make our marriages thrive is by remembering the purpose of the holiday and living that purpose out in our own marriages, living that out in front of people, in front of our children, in front of our coworkers, and in front of our family, our church family, showing, hey, this is what life is really all about. This is um, what we should be experiencing. And when we live that, it can help us tamp down some of that unnecessary stress about the holidays.
And I think some of that is, yes, you can have peace at Target or Costco or the grocery store.
I'm not sure you can have peace at Target at this time of year. I'm not
Oh.
sure that's possible at all.
And I think some of that just like cooperating with God, so sometimes you've got to go there when there's a lot of people there, kind of the height of what's going on, depending on what your schedule is. But I think some of the cooperation with God is if you're able to get there first thing when they open or at kind of like an off peak time. Sometimes you can, if you absolutely have to hit the grocery store, for example, this time of year on the weekend, if you could get there first thing in the morning when they open on Saturday, sometimes that's going to give you more peace than if you're going later on in the day. But even being able to, but the idea is to be able to maintain that peace of Christ and that joy of Christ, regardless of what your circumstances are.
Right. So, I mean, just understanding the nature, the purpose of the holiday and the purpose of marriage and how that fits in can really help us deal with and overcome. Certainly for us, that helps us relax when things aren't going the way we want them to go. When the holidays start getting out of hand, taking a moment to, okay, why are we doing this in the first place? Really helps us to slow down, rethink things, and be more mindful and more prepared to live out the purpose. But another thing that we really like to talk about is what we call team marriage.
Yeah, I think some of that comes down to the as iron sharpens iron, and just really with marriage really it's supposed to be the safest human relationship and most fulfilling and the best and the closest human relationship that you can have. It's great to be able to lean on my husband, who is first my brother in Christ, but also my husband in that special relationship. And sometimes you're able to encourage me if I'm having a rough time or dealing with holiday hustle bustle. I think that for me, sometimes just kind of work wise, it's, I'm sure those of you who are hanging with us tonight, you see this where it's like, I'm trying to do all of these things at work because I'm trying to fit maybe 2 weeks of work into 1 week, kind of leading into the Christmas break and dealing with kids are going to be off of school the next week, and how do we have a good family time together and make sure that the kids are occupied and everybody's as good to go as they can possibly be.
Absolutely. And a big part of that team marriage is presuming goodwill. A lot of times, a lot of the arguments that'll happen during the holidays will come from, why did you do that? Why did you not do this correctly? Why
That's
did you
the truth.
why did you buy this or not buy that? Or how did we get into this mess in the first place? And the first step is realizing, hey, we're on the same team, and presuming, I mean, let's just be honest, your spouse is not trying to ruin your holidays. Okay.
Better not be,
Sometimes
right?
it might feel like that because things aren't going the way that they ought to, or the way that we think they ought to, but they're not trying to ruin things. We follow some people on Facebook, and they were talking about some ways to kind of strengthen your marriage during the holidays. And one of the examples they gave was shopping together, going out and shopping. That would not work for us.
No, it would not. That's just a bad idea. So yeah, Dave and Ashley are buddies. That doesn't work for the Harveys.
Well, and we really discovered this before we were even married, when we were doing the wedding gift registry.
Oh boy.
Okay, so
like rewind to what, 2002? We were married in 2003.
And we are shopping for stuff that people might get us for the wedding, right? I mean, the whole wedding registry thing, you guys are very familiar with it. You get the little zapper. The best thing about the wedding registry is the little zapper, because you get to go around and zapping things, and that's fun. It's like playing laser tag, only the targets are a lot easier to hit.
But see, they don't do that now. You just register online.
Oh, that's a
so
good
that
point.
that just makes life easier. But
I'm not sure it would make life easier for us, because I think we'd still have the same problem we had before.
Right. Zap. Yeah.
Well, so what happened though is we were looking for dishes. right? And we had picked out,
That was the first problem.
yeah, we had picked out the dishes we wanted, or at least I thought we had. And so in my mind, we've selected the dishes and we're moving on to the next thing. Well, then Jen sees other dishes,
Oh, no.
and they were different dishes that she liked better. And I'm like, no, we're not shopping for dishes anymore. We zapped it. We crossed that off the list. And Jen's like, no, we got to do this. So we really struggled with and had a bit of a conflict and argument over how we were going about the registry. And so the whole point of the story is, for us, we've learned that shopping together is not the way to build a thriving marriage for us.
Right. It's not quality time, but for you guys, it might be something where it's like you get a coffee or a Cinnabon at the mall, and you walk around and you do some shopping together, and that can be a lovely thing. So if that works for you, fantastic. Go ahead and do that, but not so for us. So I think sometimes if you can facilitate things in such a way where you're talking to your husband, talking to your wife, and you're saying this is going to be a really great thing for us to do together, or this is going to be a not good thing for us to do together. Make sure that you're doing what you can do for some of these optional things, that you're setting yourselves up to succeed.
And plan for that and talk about it and think about it. So what works better for us is a divide and conquer approach to shopping. And this year, I think I probably did more of the shopping than you, which is unusual because I've got the Amazon app on my phone and you don't.
Oh, that's true. That's
So,
true.
but it was one of those we talked
Also
about it.
dangerous.
Well, perhaps, but so we were able to do that. So what works for you? But the point in all this is this team marriage is, remember that just because this moment is stressful, your husband, your wife isn't trying to make things difficult for you. The goal isn't let's ruin your holiday. They're trying to work through this in a way that they understand. And when we start with the idea of, hey, okay, let's back off. I know that you're not trying to make this difficult for me, but this is difficult right now. So let's open up a communication here and discuss what's going on. And sometimes it's great if you can point out, okay, I'm feeling this way and I want to express this and I want to talk about this. But sometimes the person that's feeling the stress isn't even really sure why they're feeling it or what they're feeling right now. But we should be able to see in each other, and we can, right? We know each other so well, we can see that there's something not right.
And sometimes you just have to check in, just say, hey, are you doing okay? And I think that it's always important when you're approaching your spouse that it's out of concern and compassion, rather it being an accusation, because it's like, gosh, it seems like you're feeling a little off, or you seem like you're kind of struggling with something. Are you okay? How can I help? And I think that that's a good way to look at that. And I think the other thing too that can come into play around the Christmas season is the family of origin issues, being what is the family that you came out of, and how does that family celebrate Christmas? How did your parents interact with extended family? What were some of the key holiday celebrations that they did, or maybe even still do, and how does your family fit into that, and how does that work out? And that's something that you need to be aware of, and just have that conversation again in a very concerned and compassionate way. Shout out to my friend Lisa, who always says be curious. And I think that's just a beautiful thing to be in marriages, because we had a gentleman who is a client of mine. I'm an attorney, so this is on the estate planning side of things. And he read our book. He's been married for 60 years. And he said, Jennifer, I'm starting to apply this, and I've already learned some things in here. And his wife's kind of teasing him, where was this book, 60 years ago, which I think is just a riot. So good Christian guy, but always looking to continue to improve his marriage, which I just love. And I'm sure his wife loves that too. And she's on board. So it's a good idea to continue to be curious and just say, hey, how we never talked about this. How did your family handle things? And what do you think about that? Or do you feel stuck keeping these traditions? Would you rather not celebrate some of these traditions, or do you feel obligated? What are your thoughts with some of these things? And I think that that's a positive. And again, investing in that concept of team marriage. Is there anything else that you wanted to add about team marriage?
Well,
Ryan?
I wanted to say another way. Jen talked about, hey, are you okay? But sometimes the question isn't, are you okay? You seem to, but are we okay?
Mhm.
Sometimes something's going on and there will be stress. This happened recently with us where
Mhm.
Jen was stressed about something and so much going on and frustration. And are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Well, the question I was really concerned about though, are we okay?
Mhm.
Because that was not to say that Jen's stress about work and the other holiday stuff is unimportant, but help, I can't enter into that if I'm not welcome because there's something between us.
Mhm.
And so I asked, hey, are we okay? And yes, there wasn't something going on between us in that moment. And really, what Jen needed to do is just separate herself from the stress of what was going on. You told me, hey, I just need to sleep this off. And then the
Yes.
next day, I mean, you were much better the next day. But that's important, more so than, hey, are things okay with between you and work? Are things okay with the holiday stress? But are we okay? And sometimes we can't fix the other stress. Sometimes that's just going to be there. I cannot fix the knucklehead attorney that Jen has to deal with on the other side of a case. I can't do that.
Well, you could. Yeah, we're not doing that. We're not going there.
But I can't fix those things, and Jen can't fix my frustration with things that are going on outside the home. Or, I went grocery shopping today, and Jen's not going to be able to fix the fact that people were just in the way and frustrating in the grocery store, or people are driving like maniacs. We
But
can't.
you still have the peace of Christ, right?
There you go. So you can't fix that, but I can be there with you if things are okay with us.
Mhm.
And so what's more important is making sure things are okay with us. And that's really what team marriage is. Hey, we're in this together. Division of labor is important in a marriage. Who does what? And that actually is one of the things that makes marriage strong, is having a clear idea of, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is what you're going to do. And together we're going to accomplish our goals. But we can only do that when we're a team. And if you think about it, think of any team, a sports team, a work team, whatever. When things are not okay with the team, then things don't go well. And this is, if you follow sports, this is the drama all the time. In sports, is you've got two superstars on a team, or you've got someone saying this or that, and then all of a sudden the team starts nosediving. They may have the best talent in the league, but the team's not working together because they don't trust each other, because we're not okay as a team.
Mhm.
And for us to thrive during the holidays, or in marriage in general, for us to thrive, we need to make sure that we're okay.
And I think some of it too is, how does your spouse handle stress or handle a bad time? Because I was having just some issues with work, and it was some stuff with kids being cranky and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, Brian and I make sure that we're like watching some television show together, and we're like having a dessert. And sometimes we'll be more chatty than other times, and it's like we'll just kind of like hit the pause button on the TV, and we'll just kind of talk about some things. But like Brian had said, I was having just a really stressful day that happened earlier on in the week. And for me, it was, I have been looking forward to my time with Brian. I am wiped out. I do not want to have some major conversation with Brian right now, because I want to just be entertained with the TV show and have my dessert. But it was really great that Brian was there with me. But I think it's good for you to talk to your spouse about, how do we handle stress, or how do we handle a hard time? And like Brian said, just checking in, what's going on? Why are you not feeling fantastic? If you're not, are we okay? And sometimes it's just, as in my experience, it's like, we're good. I'm exhausted. I'm wiped out. I just can't, but I'm glad you're here with me in this. And sometimes people need to even take some time when they're apart. And I think we've seen a lot of this in the pandemic. I'm the extrovert of us here. Brian's the introvert. But even for me, sometimes just during the pandemic and lockdown time, it's like I got to get out on a walk. And sometimes we do walks together, excuse me. But sometimes things happen where it's like I just got to go be by myself, and that's okay too, to be able to do that kind of unplugging and whatnot.
And another point with team marriage that I'd like to hit is take advantage of biology. And what I mean by that is physical touch reduces stress. It releases the hormones in your body to relax things. So holding hands,
Mhm.
hugging. Sometimes you're frustrated and angry and you can't do that right now, but take advantage of what biology is. And you're feeling stressed, you're feeling worried, just take some time and hold each other's hands, hug. Um, Physical intimacy will help reduce that stress and bring you close together as a couple, and take advantage of that. Sometimes what I really need, especially for me, my love language is physical touch.
Mhm.
What I really need is a hug. What I really need is a kiss. And that helps me de-stress and relax. And there's plenty of research done about how physical touch helps reduce stress. So take advantage of that. You guys are a team and use that together, and be physically intimate with each other to help experience that thriving marriage. And don't let I'm too tired. Okay. So in the evenings, okay, sexual intimacy. Don't let the stress of I'm so busy with work, I'm so busy shopping, I'm so busy cooking, I'm so busy making a menu, I'm so busy stressed out because my weird Uncle Nick is going to do this or that. And that, when it's time, we're just going to go to sleep. Don't let that stuff overcome, because that's going to help build a thriving marriage as well.
But also that to say, I mean, we all know that it's absolutely the right thing for a spouse to say, I'm just not interested in having sex. I can always decline having sex, but certainly make sure that you're doing so in a kind and a respectful kind of manner. And like Brian was saying, carve out time for your spouse. And sometimes that means that you have to say, I'm just going to let go of the crazy that's happened, and I am going to connect with my spouse in that kind of way.
And that kind of ties into another thing we wanted to talk about. We call it unexpectations.
Right.
So, what are the expectations you have? If you heard the podcast that dropped this week, unexpectations, every conflict in every marriage started with an unmet expectation. And the holidays are full of expectations.
Oh my goodness. And if the expectations aren't met, it's filled with all kinds of disappointments. So that's really hard. So it's important to be able to navigate around those expectations. And I think just fleshing that out a little bit, these are expectations that might be unspoken. They might not be shared, like you have different expectations than what your spouse has, so they're not shared. You haven't talked about them, that makes them unspoken. What are some other ones that you'd want to throw out there?
Well, I think that's the big one. I mean, unspoken, unshared. These are the expectations that just it's so ingrained in you. You're so used to it. But guess what? Your spouse didn't grow up with that, and so they may not share those expectations, or unreasonable. It's just okay. It is not reasonable that you're going to do this at this time every holiday. Things are going to be different. You got to be okay with that. But a lot of that too is based on where expectations come from. And one of the things, when you find yourself frustrated, when you find that, hey, my expectations aren't being met, we need to start with, where did that expectation come from?
Right. And that's where, we had talked about just the idea of the family of origin, because sometimes that's where those expectations can come from. It's like, well, my mom always made sure that Christmas cookies were baked. And how come you're the wife in the marriage now? How come you're not baking the Christmas cookies? Just as an example. Or, why is dad not doing something to kind of stage a Santa Claus kind of thing happening, because my dad did that when I was growing up. So it's good to talk about those kinds of things if you haven't already. And even if you're several years into a marriage and you haven't had these conversations yet, that's okay. We can get you on track, and that can happen. We want you to have a thriving marriage.
Absolutely. And another place that expectations come from is from the media, from just
Oh
culture.
no.
So we were joking, we were joking about the Hallmark movies, right? And there's like 3 plots that they make millions of dollars and millions of Hallmark movies. And Hallmark, awesome, good job. There's so many people, my mom being one of them, that are so comforted, that find the great joy and peace in watching these prepackaged conflicts that are resolved in 90 to 100 minutes.
Yeah, it's
And-
like I'm so sorry. Like city boyfriend is going to get dumped for like some farmer that has a six pack, right?
or other way around. I mean, but we get these ideas and we have so much from Instagram, from Facebook, from I don't know if they're doing TikTok videos now for Christmas. They probably are, but I'm too old for TikTok.
Come on now.
But we get these ideas and then we feel like we have to live into this is what Christmas is.
Mhm.
And that's just toxic. It is okay to want a pretty Christmas tree. It is okay to want gingerbread cookies. It's okay to want snow on Christmas. But we've got to understand that there's so many things that are out of our control, and we need to be looking at what is Christmas about, and we need to prioritize God first and then each other, and not these ideas. Because again, the Hallmark movie, they've got writers. And when that conflict doesn't exactly work out just the way it should be, they can go back to the writing room and rewrite it, or they can just shoot that again and again until you have that perfect kiss under the mistletoe with the snow falling perfectly, creating a snow globe backdrop. They can do that because it's not real. But we can't. We live in reality, and we can have thriving marriages and thriving relationships better than anything that Hallmark's ever going to be displayed. But we've got to make sure that we're looking at where the expectations come from.
And I think that just in the what I think is just beautiful was with our lives, and I'm talking about all of us in the midst of the crazy and the hustle bustle and some sadness or some grief that some families might have over the holidays due to the loss of loved ones. There's just that still that opportunity to experience that joy and that peace and the tranquility and togetherness as you're able to have it in the midst of all of that. And I think that that's an amazing thing that God is going to bring to us every time.
And one more thing about unexpectations is your expectations are going to change. Our expectations for decorations when we first got married to what they are now is different. When children enter the picture, it's different. We have just, you're dealing with certain things, even the ages. This is one of the things that's really interesting now is what our children want for Christmas and how do we manage that and what's appropriate and what's not is different because we've got a teenage daughter and almost tween son. Those expectations change. What Christmas looks like is going to change. Even sometimes communicating to extended family expectations that have to change as well. Life stages change. Perhaps work situations change. Perhaps you've moved and now it's like, no, it's not reasonable. It used to be, hey, we can be there Christmas Eve and Christmas morning because we live 3 blocks away, but now I've moved cross country, and you know what? Maybe I'm going to be there for Thanksgiving and not Christmas this year, and just managing those expectations and communicating that and let expectations change and be okay with that. Your Christmas experience is not a postcard. It's not a picture on a wall. It's something that's living and breathing, and you're experiencing that together. And it's okay that it's not the same as it was on your first Christmas together.
That's very true, and I think that that's something to keep in mind. That we met this wonderful woman in Texas over the summer named Pam, and she used the term "flex and flow with Jesus." And I just think that that's so applicable to all areas of life. So if I'm kind of seeing a bizarre kind of curveball that seems to be thrown my way in life, it's like, okay, I've got Jesus with me and I'm flexing and flowing with him, and we're going to make this whole thing work.
Absolutely. Were you ready to open it for questions? It looked like you were ready to go with that.
Yeah, we can certainly delve into some questions here. And if you folks want to type that into the chat, that's going to go directly to us. And we've already had some that are kind of coming in here. So we can just go ahead and jump in. So Brian, which one do you want to start with?
Oh, I don't know. So let's see. I feel squeezed between my work obligations, kids who are going to be home, and running around to different parties and events. What do I do? Okay, so dealing with all of the craziness
Yeah, a lot of that is just as we've been talking about all the way around. And I think that's the tough thing because we don't have the information on what this person's employment kind of situation is. I don't know if this is somebody who's working from home or can work from home, or if this is someone who has to be outside of their home to be working. But I think that all of us look at this where it's like, oh my goodness, the kids are going to be off for 2 weeks, and we want to facilitate some fun things that can be done, but we're kind of running around. And I think that when it comes to us as spouses, we need to sit down and just kind of talk through and look at the calendar and see how that can be best facilitated, but also make sure that the spouse who's working outside of the home, and it might be one, it might be two, make sure that the spouses don't feel terribly spread thin because we're trying to potentially play cruise director for the kids.
I think
um,
that's a big point. Can I jump on that real
oh,
quick? The
please
cruise
do.
director, it's okay if your kids aren't involved in everything all the time. It's okay for things to just be chill. You know, we get this idea of, oh, this and this and this and this. Remember what the holidays are about. Remember why we're doing this. And sometimes the busyness can distract from why you're doing the business in the first place. So be okay with not meeting other people's expectations. Be okay with, you know what, telling the children no. Be okay with telling your parents, no, we're not going to do that. There are certain things that you just have to do. Sometimes for employment purposes, the work Christmas party, yeah, I could say no to that, but then I would probably be saying no to the next promotion or no. So
Mhm.
that there's things that you, this is a higher stakes thing that to say no to, but be okay with not fitting everything in and just choosing, you know what, I'm gonna block this off.
Right, and I think it's important to have a conversation about that as a couple as to what makes sense to just take out of the schedule, that you don't have to go to it or don't have to participate in it, or if you go, maybe you don't have to be there as long. Maybe it's something that you could just drop in and out of. And of course, there's a lot of it depends things here. Brian kind of teases me because as a lawyer, I'm often telling people, well, the answer to any legal question is it depends, and that's always going to be the case for things that each of you would be facing in your particular circumstances. But it's important, and really the core of it is for you as a couple to sit down and have an honest conversation. Again, be curious, be compassionate, be concerned about things, as to how you can best navigate some of these things together. But as Brian indicated, sometimes it's better to cut some things out of the schedule, so that it's not just so jam packed that you're just running crazy, bless you, and everything. And you're having a better experience because you're not running yourself ragged.
And be clear how you're feeling too. You know, to the person who you're feeling squeezed, be clear that you about how you feel. Be clear to your spouse, hey, I'm feeling squeezed right now and I need help. I need to work through this, because you don't have to do it on your own and you shouldn't. And so feeling squeezed, open up the lines of communication and discuss that together.
Yeah, I think that that's a great thing to be able to do. And I've got another one that came through, and it says, "My mom died earlier this year. I am holding my breath and half-heartedly walking into Christmas. I'm so sorry about that. I'm trying to keep up appearances, but it just won't be the same without her. And how can I celebrate Christmas this time around?" And again, I'm just so sorry that she passed away, and that you're dealing with this. It's just really heartbreaking, and I think that all of us have just seen losing a loved one, and then kind of going into that first holiday season, and that can just be very difficult between Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's there. And what really stood out to me about this question is the idea of I'm trying to keep up appearances. And that's not something that you should have to do in front of your spouse. I can understand kind of putting on a brave face for kids, or possibly for some extended family, but that should not be the case for a spouse. And you should be able to have some very honest conversations just pertaining to that. I think that with a lot of things, when you're dealing with that kind of holiday stress, and again, not being trite about it, at all, but if you're going to Romans chapter 5, it talks about rejoicing in the sufferings that you're having, and of course suffering producing that endurance, endurance producing character, and then character producing that kind of hope. And we do pray that God's hope is going to be coming to you at this time. But make sure that you're carving out time to connect with your spouse, and also talking about potentially having to alter possibly some family traditions if that's going to help you. So that might, you might prefer to hold on tight to those holiday traditions, but if things are going to be easier for you to maybe veer off of that, that I think is a positive thing to do.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. And, it's tough, and it's okay for it to be tough. I think more than anything, just remember Jesus is with you in it. It over time, you'll experience things differently, but it's okay that Christmas is different this year. And just be honest. It's like, hey, this hurts right now, and it's okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So here's another one. I'm the saver and my husband is the spender.
Uh-oh.
He tends to
Oh, did I write this? I'm kidding.
He tends to overextend our budget this time of year.
What?
I don't want to be stingy, but I want to be responsible. He thinks that I'm cheap, but this is a major cause of stress for me. It happens every year.
Ooh.
How do we handle this? That's really tough. And I think first step is remember teen marriage. Remember that he's not trying to ruin your life, wreck your finances. He's not trying to end things. So that's the first thing, is just remember teen marriage. But like so many questions that we come across when we're talking to couples and when we're coaching them, you got to talk about it. And it's going to be an awkward conversation. It's going to be difficult, but express how you're feeling and why. But then also take a deep look at yourself. It's like, okay, are you overextended or are you feeling overextended? They can feel the same, but they're not always the same. So make sure that you're being honest with yourself, and then have that conversation. Here's how I'm feeling. Here's what's going on with me. Be clear. It's like, hey, I don't want to be stingy, but I want to make sure we're set up for success moving forward. And then listen to what your husband's saying. What's going on with your husband? And if your husband is on too, why is this important? What are the things that you want to spend money on, and why is that important? And make sure that you're looking at the situation from what's the purpose of this holiday. Again, getting gifts for people for Christmas time is an expression of God's extravagant love to us through each other, but that it's got to be subservient to what the holiday is, God's inbreaking into the world and showing his love and starting the process of transforming the world that we're going to experience in the future. And the gifts are an expression of us sharing love between each other and sharing God's love. And so when it comes something where it's like, oh, there's an image piece to that, or there's some other external pressure about how much money to spend, your family wants you more than they want your gift. And if there's someone telling you you're only a good parent, or you're only a good son, son-in-law, daughter, daughter-in-law, whatever, based on how much money you send, that's a lie. It's just not true. And focus on what Christmas is really about, and together build that into your traditions.
Very true. And I mean, I very much doubt this, but I have seen this where a spouse is addicted to spending, like diagnosed as if someone was addicted to gambling. And like Brian had mentioned, it's something where if it's not that kind of an extreme thing, what you do want to do is make sure that you're understanding the purpose of the holiday season, that it's not about, impressing people or being more superfluous about things, and that funds are being wisely spent and that you're not overextending yourselves. And possibly, we're already into December here, but maybe it means that there are other sacrifices that are made earlier in the year so that funds can be spent later in the year.
And the big thing is talk about it, understand, communicate where you're coming from, and understand where your husband's coming from so that you can build that thriving marriage.
Mhm.
Want to go for another question?
Okay, so let's see here. My husband's sister's two kids are under the age of 6. They are not well behaved. We are hosting Christmas this year, and I'm concerned about them tearing up our house or getting hurt. My sister-in-law and her husband do not discipline their kids and don't seem to care what they do. Oh, and the question is, how do I keep the peace and host while not cringing the entire time? I think that that's a really difficult question there. And I think that it's very much about your husband as the family representative, getting in there and talking to your sister-in-law and her husband in regards to what your standards are for the household, and really emphasizing that you don't want their kids to get hurt, and that you just want to make sure that it's going to be really a pleasurable experience for all people involved. So I think also just to be proactive in making sure that there aren't things out that could potentially be broken, that you're taking time to make sure that your home is as childproof as it can be so that no one can get hurt. And to me, that also includes getting some of your kids' toys out of the way that it could be broken, and that there could be an issue there if these kids aren't well behaved. I think it's just a tough thing, because I see this where you folks are being generous by opening up your home to host, but they're we're anticipating them not parenting well and making sure that their kids are behaving well because of past experience. Did you have anything to add to that, Brian?
Well, I think also structure things in a way that you can set up boundaries. Whatever works for your home. Is there a room that you can take things out of, and this is the playroom for the holidays? Planning, if you're in a snowy location, which normally we are here in Michigan, but not this year. Plan for sledding, plan for building snowmen. Come up with ways that you can set boundaries and provide appropriate places for young children to expend energy, and still work within your standards, within what your comfort level is for your home. I think that's something that can be helpful, but certainly whoever the biological adult sibling is needs to make sure they're communicating, hey, this is what we're going to do, this is how it's going to work out, and make sure they're protecting your family.
And I'd say again, for your husband, that's like cool uncle whoever. So I think as is possible, I really like the idea of having some activities for the kids to potentially do outside, and maybe wearing them out, and they're tired when they come inside, and then they can have some hot chocolate.
And also, I mean, coloring books and board games, and even Googling indoor games, what's some things that you can do inside that are fun, that you can keep the kids occupied with. That's going to be helpful to you.
We will pray for you.
And so here's one. I feel like an afterthought around Christmas. I feel like it's all about taking care of family and extended family. I feel left out and unimportant. I hate this time of year.
Oh, that's disappointing. I think that when I'm hearing that, of course, I'm presuming that this individual who messaged that in is married. And I think that it's really important for you to talk to your husband or talk to your wife about how you're feeling left out. And I don't know all the thoughts, in circumstances. This sounds like somebody who might have their plate really full of kind of taking care of other people and just kind of making sure that things are scheduled and good to go, but doesn't feel cared for.
It really sounds like a lot of expectations to me. Sounds
Hmm.
like expectations that are put on you that are uncomfortable or unnecessary, going back to this unexpectations. Um, but also, what are your expectations and have you communicated them? So I would encourage you a couple things. One, discuss the expectations that you feel are inappropriate, that are being placed upon you. I don't want to do this. I don't want to, whatever those expectations are, and I don't know what they are for you. But discuss those with your spouse. Say, hey, these are expectations, and some of them maybe you don't need to do them. Maybe some of them your spouse can take on for you. But also, it sounds to me like you have some expectations that aren't being met, and let's work from the presupposition that they're not being met, not because no one wants to meet them, but they don't know that it's an expectation or they don't know how to meet that expectation. And so talk to your spouse and say, hey, these are some things that I'm feeling. This is what I'm experiencing right now. And have that open conversation. Share, hey, these are the expectations that aren't being met right now. And let's figure out a way together to meet these expectations that I need to experience the love, joy, peace, and hope that the holidays are intended to bring.
And also, again, we don't have a lot of information here, but this sounds like somebody, who's really having a hard time. And Brian and I very much like to just absolutely take the stigma out of any kind of therapy. And if this is something where it makes sense for you to see a licensed counselor or a licensed therapist around this time of the year, I think that that's a wise thing to do, to see if that can be scheduled, if that would be helpful, and talk to your church and see if your church would have some resources or referrals for you too. Okay, let's see here. So, my wife and I have been married for 3 years and have an infant son together. She was married before and has a son who's in middle school. We all get along well. How do we deal with sharing time with my stepson's dad? He's very standoffish, and I don't see him as a good influence on his son, who is my stepson.
Yeah, that's tricky, right? Because
Well, blended families are tricky, but I think that, God can just pour out so much grace, and it can just be such a beautiful thing, because I always see blended families as there's just more people to love in that situation where you're making that work.
yeah, I think a big thing, I wish that we could sit down and talk this over more. It's can't really do that in this venue. I think it's important to remember that your stepson's biological father is his dad, and you got to respect that. And um, making sure, I mean, some of it's just like, okay, what is, if there's any sort of, okay, this is what has been pre-decided for sharing time. um, I think it's okay to be honest with your stepson and say, okay, these, if there's standards that are different in your house than in his dad's house, um, to, okay, it's a little different here. But I think also that the biological mom has to be able to communicate in a loving way to her ex-husband, or I mean, I didn't say you were didn't say you're married, and um, the boy's dad saying, hey, we need to work this out together, and remember that you've only got so much control, and you kind of got to be okay with that, because that's where we are at this point. And so communicating, hey, these are the standards, but also be very careful how you communicate to your stepson about what you think about his biological dad, because he
Mhm.
loves him. He's got that relationship with him, and you're going to lose your influence over your stepson if you make it a conflict between you and his biological dad. So make sure you're not communicating something that's combative, but rather that we're in this together, and then have that conversation. Hey, we're in this together. we're all raising this young man to grow up to be a responsible, healthy, loving, godly man, and help and have those conversations.
And I think it's possible too that the the biological dad, he could even be intimidated by stepdad, just kind of depending on um just how their relationship dynamics have worked out. And I think that if it's possible that we're not expecting these guys to be best friends by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that if they would be able to connect in some sort of a way where they'd be able to talk to each other and be friendly even if they're not friends.
Yeah, I mean, when you've talked about this a lot of time with your clients, divorce, hey, the marriage is ending. That's never a positive thing, but let's try to make it so you can be on the same side at the wedding. Your
Same
children's
side of
wedding,
the church,
church at the
yeah, at the
wedding.
wedding, yeah.
Yeah. Dude, remember you're co-parenting. Um, you've got to work this out. And so what are the expectations? Communicate in a loving manner, and remember that this is a person that, I mean, when you committed to this marriage, you committed to this. And so work this through and understand that, yeah, it's something that is different than other families, but it's not something that you can't overcome. And I encourage you to try to find places of commonality, because if you can build on those places of commonality, then the differences often aren't as big as they feel. And so try to build on that as well.
Mhm. And then it looks like we have a couple questions that are pretty similar here, just as far as time and space are concerned. But I will jump into this one. My husband has family in Germany who we haven't seen in over 2 years due to the pandemic. And actually, we're hearing about some of that in our small group, although this is not a question from one of them. Any ideas how we can connect better and celebrate Christmas in a more meaningful way since we can't be together? And nobody's happy about the pandemic having happened. But I'm very grateful that we have the technology that we have now, because we can do Zoom seminars like we're doing now, and you can do more interactive things with your family members who are out of state, out of the country, or even I've heard of people doing Zoom with elderly parents who might be in assisted living, but just at different times it hasn't been permitted for visitors to come in due to the pandemic. So I think that we in our small group party last year, we were doing some games, and it was all over Zoom, and you just kind of do the best that you can do with some of these technology things. And sometimes I think sending gifts, even if they're like not expensive and they're silly, and maybe shipping costs more than the gifts themselves. If we're looking at shipping over to Germany, I think that that can work out in a really positive way. But it's important, I think, to stay connected. But in 2021, we just have so many more opportunities with being able to send photos to each other and videos and text messaging, and just very grateful for that. So I think that those are some ideas. And if you're able to connect and talk, and as silly as it sounds, share a meal all together, even though you can't share the food through the screen, I think that that can be meaningful. Or opening presents in front of each other, and just doing what you can do to share those holiday things and kind of keep the traditions in as best as you can with those time and space limitations.
And we keep going back to expectations, because that's just a big part of what this is. What do you expect? What do you long for? What do you miss? And then communicate that to the family members that are physically distant, and brainstorm, okay, we can't, you know, dance together like we normally do. We can't bake the pie together like we normally do. But what are those things that are really important to you that you miss? And then discuss with them, hey, this is really special to me. And is there a way what could we do to make this something where it's, maybe if you like to bake cookies together, maybe you're both baking cookies, but you're on Zoom or one of these other things. But also hear from them, listen to them, and hear, hey, what's special to you? And if it's something that can be really meaningful too, is if you take some time, and especially like if it's an aunt or uncle or grandparents, let them share with the children, hey, something special about when they were growing up, the conversations that you would have had around the table. Maybe it's, hey, Uncle Bob, or hey, Grandma, um, tell me about, share a little bit about your Christmas as a child, but also take advantage of the different traditions. I grew up in Germany as an army brat, and so for you guys, there's some really beautiful Christmas traditions in Germany, and maybe they can share some of those with you. Hey, this is what we saw at the Christmas market. Hey, this is what's going on, and take advantage of that, being curious about the holidays over there as well.
In the next question that I was saying kind of loops into that, is that was shared about again, Operation Thriving Marriage. Brian is in the military, talking about a husband who's deployed overseas for Christmas, and is the first time away from the wife who's at home, and the kids, and just kind of some of those ideas about that kind of celebration. And of course, we know sometimes it's the woman who is in the military who deploys, and the husband's at home. So I just wanted to just quickly share, last December, that was us. So Brian was deployed, and he was in Southwest Asia, and we were here in the midst of a pandemic with all of that. And again, we were very blessed that we had so much ready access to Zoom and technology, and just different ways to connect over video. And that was great, because that's what we did. We were unwrapping presents in front of each other, and I had of course sent presents over to you, and you sent things to us, and then we had the kids opening other things. And for us, because it was during the pandemic, our neighbors were home, and they have kids who are our son's age. So Christmas morning, they were all out, and they were sledding in our backyard, which we wouldn't have had that opportunity had the pandemic not hit. So that was pretty neat. And then with my daughter, I was watching Wonder Woman 1984 with her, because it had just dropped on that streaming service. So again, interesting stuff there. But I think that just staying connected, I think it's always good when you're going through a tough time, to have something that you can look forward to. So for us, I think it was just, we're going to watch this movie together. It was, again, the fun thing of our then 9-year-old, now 10-year-old, being able to get out there and do some of the sledding. And I think that connectivity just worked in as positive of a way, because I think sometimes people want to focus on what I don't have and what I can't do, but shifting that perspective and that focus to what I do have and what I can do, I think can be very empowering. And it can also, again, give you that something to look forward to as well.
And take advantage of the resources on base, or through your husband's unit. For while I was gone, my unit got a bunch of presents. They adopted our family and
Oh
got a
my
bunch of
gosh, that was
presents, and they
crazy.
brought those. And so there's a lot of things, and this is probably not news to you, because you've had someone telling you about it. But take advantage of all those family resources on base, and there's a lot of stuff there for you to help take care of your family, because you are incredibly important. And the unit knows that, and the base knows it, the commander knows that. And don't feel like you've got to go through this alone. Make sure you're connecting with, if there's a key spouse program or anything like that, so you can connect with other spouses who may have their spouses deployed as well, or they've been through what you're going through, and lean on that community, because they're there to help you. And that's going to help you through this time, because it is difficult to be away, to have your husband away, and to be dealing with all of this stuff. And it's different, and kids are confused and frustrated, and it's not the same, and it's not going to be the same, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean it's going to be bad. bad, you can make it good and take advantage of those resources that are available to you.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes just stepping out of the box a little bit to do something a little different. Like we ended up cooking some things that we wouldn't have normally cooked, being very specific. We got a Star Wars themed cookbook and cooked some side dishes that just looked a little bizarre, but it was just kind of a fun, different thing to do. So sometimes it's great to hang on to traditions, but also do some things to mix it up a little bit as well.
So, I mean, we're not seeing any more questions coming in. If you have any more questions, if you want to pop those in the chat, we'll get to those. But other than that, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you being with us. Want you to know that we really believe that God wants your marriage to thrive. And we do think that your marriage can be better on January 2nd than it is today if you take some time to focus on it and to really remember why this holiday exists and what's going on.
And why you're together, to be achieving that holiness that God has for you. And by attaining that holiness and what we're designed to be, that's going to give you that joy that's going to last, as opposed to those fleeting, moments of happiness. You want to have that continuous joy.
Yeah. And we'd love to hear more from you. You can connect with us through the Operation Thriving Marriage Facebook page. You can go to operationthrivingmarriage.com and you can connect us with us that way. Please check that out. We've got a podcast also called Operation Thriving Marriage that you can check out. That's available. We drop that every other week. And if you're in the Midwest, we're doing a retreat here in Michigan next month. And you can get more information at our website there as well and register. Thank you so much for being here, for taking the time to be with us. God bless you guys and have an amazing holiday season.
Merry Christmas, guys.